I think the first kind of question I want to ask is some foundational stuff, like the process of how you guys ended up doing these film projects together. What inspired it? How did the U of A kind of foster that environment for you? That sort
Uh,
of deal.
I'll let Bernard go because he's the lead guy here. This is really like his vision, and I just kind of came along. So Bernard.
Yeah, well, we were talking about before how we don't remember how we met, but uh, I think I just kind of gravitated towards Jose because he kind of reminds me of the work ethic that I have, and I learned a lot from him before I wanted him to be my producer on my films. And from being in class, he was my instructor at one point. I mean, we've been boys forever. We've been boys for a long time.
Yeah.
And he just always exudes. Even when I was in his class, I think one of the biggest memories I have is that he would never let me, like, I wasn't his homie in class. I was a student. Even though we go hang out afterwards, if I would turn something in, he would never let me turn something in that was not the best of my ability. He wouldn't let me slack off. He might have, I don't know, Jose, you might have graded me harder because you did me, but but he never let me do anything like that. And that is probably the biggest quality of why I wanted him to be my producer, because I know he's gonna check me on things. And that is the reason that the film became Lost in the Sauce became the film that it became, because there were times when I thought that everything was great, but I needed somebody's eyes outside of me that does not care how I feel to make sure that we get this product, man. And we got that final cut. It was amazing. It was amazing because Jose, checking me on things when I need to check.
Yeah, that's kind of awesome how it goes from like grading for a class to kind of like a nice peer review for the films you're making outside of it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it, a peer review. And I think me being an outsider, like I don't know anything about boxing, to be honest. I don't really watch boxing, but I am like a storyteller first, and I love the human aspect of it. So I think Bernard, he's got a bit of tunnel vision for the best, because that's his world. The boxing is his world. His homies are his homies, Hot Sauce and Coach Lightburn, they're his homies. So it was kind of hard. And it happens to me too when I work on my stuff, where I'm like seeing things from my perspective. I need an outsider to be like, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. What's the connection here? Who are these people? What's going on? Because you
Yeah.
get this tunnel vision as a filmmaker sometimes, so you forget that you have to bring out to public who doesn't have any knowledge of it. So me coming in, like I don't know anything about boxing. I barely know what an uppercut is. But I look for the narrative threads of the film and like, wait, like how did you get from point C to point X? Like there's a lot of stuff here missing. And so it was in 2019 when Bernard showed me this little like 5 minute like trailer, like rough cut. And it was about Kalvin Henderson. And I told him, Bernard, I have no idea what the heck is going on here. Like you're talking about like Philadelphia
Exactly what he
last
said.
year. Who is this guy? Like what does he even do? Like what's he doing in Philadelphia? Like we had this sequence of him like traveling to XNA through the airport, and like somebody watching this in Philadelphia is like, what the heck is XNA? Not knowing that it's the Northwest Arkansas Regional Airport. These little things that I'm like, it's a total foreigner. I'm looking at it, and then I told him, Bernard, you're missing the story. The story here is not this fight that Calvin went on to Philadelphia. The story is Calvin. Like, dude is interesting as heck. And because of this 5 minute window into his life, I'm like, I want to learn everything about his life. So I told him, Bernard, like, you got to do like a 3 act fuller documentary about Calvin. And it went into development for like what, 2 years, Bernard, 3 years, and we
Yeah, I think we would have released that. We released the film festival 2021. So yeah, that was 20. I had been filming probably
mhm.
since 2018, and then
2018, yeah.
I came to you in 2019, and then
Mhm.
film came out in 2021. So yeah.
How
Right.
did the film kind of change with that advice in mind? Like, what decision making went into making it what it is and the success that it is?
Bernard, I mean, you're the one
Man,
who
it changed. It changed a lot because Jose destroyed it, ripped it apart. So the film, it's so funny because the film that everybody sees, which is a really cool story. That film was actually shot and edited in about 4 weeks. But it took
Yeah.
the 3 years before that for that film to come out, because the film that I had before, I mean, Jose, we cut whole scenes out of that film before we got it down to what is the beautiful thing that it became. There's a really, really cool scene where we were in Philadelphia, and we were at the pier, the Naval Yard in Philadelphia, and I had all these beautiful shots and these cool interviews that I wanted to be in, but the wind in the back was awful, and I really had to mess with the sound on that interview, because I was like, I have to have this interview in the movie. And Jose was like, man, you can't have the interview. And I was like, dude, I'm gonna have this
Oh,
interview in the movie. And he's like, no, you gotta cut everything. You gotta cut all that. He's like, it's unfortunate, but he's like, just cut it out and watch the film without the scene. And then just give me an honest opinion. And I cut it out and I was like, wow, it's a better film. So there were times,
I didn't even remember about the naval yard scene. That's right. Yeah, you completely cut that
yeah,
one out.
yeah, there's nothing in the film about in that Navy Yard in that interview. They had some really good things that were said in the interview, but it just didn't fit, and that is why I like having Jose. That's why he's my producer, because I need stuff like that, because I was not going to cut. There's nothing in the world that would have made me cut that unless somebody comes in and is like, it's better without it. And
Mhm.
so that film changed. That was the first big like metamorphosis that the film had, and then when we got to the end of it, I was just like, man, there's so many things that I can tell and I can still use footage and all this other kind of stuff for. But I basically sat down at the beginning of the month and I was like, we're gonna film these interviews, because I'm a better filmmaker now too. You know, from 2018
yeah.
to 2021, I'm a way better filmmaker than I was, right? So I'm like, we're gonna reshoot these interviews, something I did not want to do, because it's kind of like when you draw something. Can you really ever draw something the exact same that way that
Uh-huh.
you drew it the first time, right? And so I was like, I'm never going to be able to get as good as I got from this other one. But the cool thing is that it was a lot better the second time than it was the first time. It's not even close how much better the film is in that 4 weeks in that crunch time. And I'm a journalist too, so I work good on deadlines. I don't want to put
Yeah.
myself in bad deadlines, but I do work good on deadlines. That last film, the film that everybody sees, went through so many chops and changes. I think that was probably our third or fourth cut of the film, the one that finally got released. It was really funny. If we got time, I'll tell a story after Jose watched it. I sent him this cut, and I had been up for like 36 hours straight without sleep,
Oh.
and I hit convert, and when I hit convert, I fell asleep on the couch. I was dating a girl at the time, and I fell asleep on the couch like as soon as my hand hit the convert button. And so when I woke up and it was converted, I said to Jose,
Oh.
keep in mind, every cut that I've sent to Jose, he's like, this is good, this is good, this is cool, but this is terrible, this is awful. Take this out, get rid of it. This is bad, whatever. And I sent it to him, and he watched it, and he called me back, and he was like, Bernard, what the heck is this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, man, this dude found something else wrong. And he's like, Bernard, that is one of the best pieces of storytelling I think I've ever seen. I was like, oh my God, thank God. So that's the final version that we got out of that. And
Oh, that's
it was cool
awesome.
because he hit me with a punch, and I was like, man, come on, dude, don't hit me again. I'm gonna go down if you hit me again.
Yeah.
And but we knocked it out, man. It really, really became, man. It's a piece of me. That film is a piece of me. It's always gonna be a piece
Yeah, it really is. Like that's the thing as a filmmaker that even though we interview our subjects and they're obviously the protagonists, like there is a lot of ourselves that goes into that film. And definitely the my thesis film, like I haven't released it because it's not as good as it could be, but it's just going back to the footage. I just remember working with Bernard and those times we had, and like that's pretty cool. And then
of me. Yeah.
we have like the thing that I won a tsunami for, that there's a lot there that with the Mountain Man, which I don't know if you remember, Bernard. I think you came in to like help me edit a few things, potentially, or maybe I'm
Hmm.
misremembering.
Yeah, I think
There's a
so.
lot of me and my teammates, Yen Wen, who I'm still really good friends with. Like we put ourselves into that, and then to see Bernard's vision of Kalvin's story, like there's just so much of Bernard in it that I'm like, yeah, I mean, I see Kalvin's story, but I also see so much of Bernard's growth as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, as as a boxer, as a person, as a man, because I know esoterically, internally, I know what work he went through, and that's the coolest thing about filmmaking. And then I wanted to give a shout out to our mentors who I think are retired now, Larry Foley and Dale Carpenter, and Carmen Cousteau as well. I don't know if she's still there at the University of Arkansas. Do you know, Zach?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, so yeah, she might have retired as well, but
She
they
did.
made us better, definitely better storytellers, better, more critical of our work for sure. Um, from Dale Carpenter, like he's a master technician of the camera. He's, very, very perfectionist. Dale Carpenter would say things like, "Well, if you have bad sound, don't use it. Like you didn't get the
Yeah.
sound, that's how you learn. Go do it
Yep,
again." And
that's how
then,
you learn to get better sound.
right.
Yeah.
And Larry Foley, he's a master perfectionist. He really had the vision to make the UA journalism school what it is now, where we have the multimedia environment as one. That was always his vision, and I'm glad that it came through. And obviously it's a whole team behind Larry Foley, but from Larry Foley, like he would tell us things like, "Oh, you got a window behind you and it's blown out. You can't use that. Go shoot it again. I don't care." Like, "Oh,
Yeah.
but Professor Foley, no, we can't. No, like you cannot turn in this mediocre work. You've got to. You can't do this." Well, but Professor Foley, stop whining, you little millennials. Go and fix it. Like you can't. This is terrible work. And it's that drive for perfectionism that really helped my generation and now the younger, you guys who are younger, to aim for bigger and better instead of settling for like real regional awards. Like Foley and Carpenter like really pushed us to be like, go for the national awards, go higher than that. Go for the Emmys, go for the National Broadcasters Awards. And that's really what you need if you're going to succeed, not just in this field, but anything. I mean, Bernard is a boxer, but I guarantee you that he has that, perfectionist drive because of what we learned in journalism school. I was also, remembering like one of our also biggest mentors. I mean, everybody there in the journalism bar, Catherine Sherrills and Gerald Jordan. I wanted to give specific shout outs to, but Gerald Jordan, he was like a father figure to a lot of us. I know he just retired a couple of years ago, and he's definitely left such an indelible mark on us. He had this saying that he had ink in his blood from when he was in the Traveler as a sports editor, because he literally got his hand caught in the printer and the ink literally went into his blood.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
And
sick.
yeah, he's just amazing. And I told him like Professor Jordan, I still have ink in my blood. I stopped being a newspaper editor like 8 years ago, and I moved on to marketing, copywriting, marketing.
Yeah.
But I still have ink in my blood. It's that level of detail to the written word that makes you a better narrative storyteller as a filmmaker. He really taught us to, be proud of our culture, to make culturally significant works, no matter what we do, to really pay attention to people's stories and make something significant, of value to culture itself. That's something that like both Bernard and I can definitely attest to. Really made us pay attention to the Kalvin Henderson story, and hopefully here to Coach Lightburn, whom I assume is right there driving, right, Bernard? There he is.
I kind of want to ask like how you ended up with like the Calvin Henderson story. Was it like a friend that kind of ended up being you documented type thing? How
Yeah,
did
You
that go
guys hear
can
me
I
from?
better?
answer that question real quick, Bernard? I mean, we kind of touched on it, but I want to,
Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of want to, I want to jump before, because Bernard has something cool to say, I'm sure. But basically, for me, it was just curiosity because I don't know Calvin. I still haven't met him, even though I was like helping with the storytelling. Like I told Bernard 5 years ago when I first like met him unofficially with his little rough cut. I'm like, dude, this dude is interesting as heck. Like, I want to meet him in person. I still haven't, but hopefully soon I'll meet uh
Yeah.
Calvin. We both know of each other because of working on the film, but we haven't met in person. But the idea is just telling Bernard, dude, this guy has a really interesting life story. Like, you've got to pursue this. Like, there's a lot more than that Philadelphia fight, which is a very esoteric thing to talk about for people who are in the boxing ring, in the boxing arena. But that's like a minute population of the world. Whereas if you tell a general story, life story of a person, that applies to 8 billion people who identify with the struggles of growing up, the struggles of, just becoming a man, becoming an adult. Like that's your story, Bernard. Like you gotta pursue it. And then doing that, like I felt like I became friends with Kalvin, even though I haven't met him yet. So now I'll let Bernard.
Yeah, I think there is value in kind of like not meeting in person yet because it's like you have to learn these details from the documentary and you can't assume like already knowing certain details or whatever if you've already met someone and
Correct.
acclimated.
Yeah, and that's like I came in with an objective, fresh-faced perspective because I didn't know him. I didn't have the
Yeah,
bias of like just knowing everything about him. And so I just opened up simple questions about his life and like meeting a stranger, but making a film about him and kind of becoming a friend over time, which tends to happen to all of us who make documentary films.
totally.
Yeah, man, it's really cool because I keep my circle. Like, it's really funny because Kevin and I were talking about this earlier. Got to just drive down Oklahoma. My real circle of friends is very, very small, and I always like it when people who are in that circle meet and know each other because I don't have any family up in Arkansas, and I've been here for almost half my life now.
Yeah,
And so my real friends like Jose and Calvin are like they're really like my brothers, and I don't use that term loosely. I mean, they really are people that if Jose called me, he was like, "Man, I need you to come to Washington." I would have to call somebody and be like, "Hey, coach, man, I got to go to Washington to help Jose with something." Just like he dropped everything to help me with my film. Um, Calvin's the same way. Coach Kevin is the same way. And I don't say that about a lot of people. There's probably 5 people, maybe 6 now, that I will not ask questions. I was like, all right, cool. I'll see you in a minute.
yeah,
And Jose being a person that didn't know Calvin before the film completely definitely helped him ask me questions about Calvin and be like, because I know Calvin, and it's hard for me it may be hard for me in the situation to tell something that somebody doesn't know because I know everything about him. I'm like, duh, I already know this already. Jose
exactly.
asking me questions like that really, really made the storytelling even deeper because me being a boxer and me being a journalist already gave me a leg up on any competition I'm ever going to have in the category of documentary film on a boxer.
Yep.
But even still, Jose coming in being a stranger just made it that much better. And so that was a really, really big thing to me that helped me a lot. That Jose might not even know, but it really, really helped me flesh out the story a lot better because I had a person that had no idea what was going on. And I'm sure we're all going to sit down and have lunch or dinner or something one day and laugh about all this. We get through reveling in their awards. But did that answer your question? What was your original question on that, Zach?
Yeah, that answered it. It was kind of just like um how you ended up with the Calvin story. Um
Oh yeah. Well, I do
yeah.
have to tell the main thing there is that I did my damnedest to get Calvin talked about at local, news stations and things like that. I won't name any names, but I broke my back trying to get people to talk about Calvin. And here is Calvin, who was fighting for the Intercontinental Championship. Number 4 in the nation as an amateur. Fought for Team USA, and
Yeah.
he's walking around Springdale, Arkansas, and nobody will talk about it. Nobody will come do
Right.
a story on him. Nobody will, kind of hype up what's going on. Hey, man, we got this champion that's
Yep.
fighting Northwest Arkansas. So I really was really angry, and I was really
Yeah.
upset. And I was like, you know what? I'm a journalist. I don't have an outlet. I don't have a news station, but I'm gonna tell your story because nobody can tell your story better than I can. I'm your sparring partner. I'm in the gym with you all day. I see all your struggles and things. If people don't want to talk about you, I'm gonna talk about you. And whatever happens after that is gonna be amazing. So the biggest thing with the film was to get his story out to people who knew that we were gonna win all these awards. But I really
Yeah.
just wanted people to know Calvin because he's such an inspirational, awesome person. And he's a great dad. He's a great husband. He's an amazing friend. Um, yeah, I just had to get his story out. So that was the big inspiration about why the film got started, why I wanted to tell the story.
That's right. Yeah, and I want to piggyback on what you just said. When I was the editor of the Spanish newspaper in Northwest Arkansas, obviously me and Bernard as homies, like we would exchange texts, and I would see on Bernard's like social media and things like everything that was going on at the gym at Straight Right. And then I see that's when I started learning about Kalvin's story and Coach Lightburn and Bernard's own boxing journey as well. Like I said, I don't know anything about boxing. Like I watched Rocky when I was a kid in the 80s with my uncles.
Yeah.
And I love that story because of the human aspect of it, not so much because of the all the butt kicking and all the punches, but it was the human element of Rocky as the underdog, as a loser nobody who kind of goes through the hero's journey. I love that movie as a kid, and I watched all five of them when I was a kid with my uncle. So I have a lot of that's my connection to boxing and why it's important to me is that connection to my uncle who passed away at age 27, 25 years ago. Um, and then, watching Raging Bull, like it's kind of half documentary, half like epic film from Martin Scorsese.
Right.
Um, and so that's what when Bernard would share all these things, like I would just think about like, man, there's so much storytelling for the human aspect of it that I want to see. And then I told my reporter, hey, can you please do a story about Bernard's work at his gym? As a Spanish editor, you don't tell somebody, hey, go cover an African American guy. The twist here was that Bernard and Coach Lightburn and Kalvin were actually mentoring a lot of Hispanic kids, like as young as 15, both boys and girls, to fight and really teach him life lessons. So that was my hook right there from the beginning
Oh, yeah.
of the story, that these three men were mentoring kids, teenagers and young adults to fight. And like I said, like what we learned through Professors Jordan and Cousteau and Foley, Carpenter, Schultz, Watkins, Brett Schulte, Hayat Tuchib. I'm not going to leave the current administration out
Yeah, yeah.
because they get their shout outs too. Uh, what we learned is that people mentoring the younger generations are the ones who are going to leave a mark. So that's why I told my reporter, Maria Teresa, I'm like, hey, please go talk to Bernard and talk to the Hispanic kids who are getting, mentored. And that's where I became aware of Kalvin's influence and Coach Lightburn's influence on the community. And it's not just a black on black influence, it's a black on Hispanic, black on white. Like these black men are just creating so much cultural change for the better, influencing the whole community, regardless of race, regardless of skin color. And that's where I guess the subconscious seeds of the film kind of arose. Like I knew that Bernard was onto something really, really important, a really important story to tell. This 2016, I want to say, when we published that story about what you guys were doing there at Straight Right.
Yeah.
And this is why when you came to me at this 2019 little short, I was like, Bernard, you got so much more story here. This is you need to shift
Yeah.
focus, because I knew of the work that they had been doing here in the community. And now we're seeing it nationally where these guys are competing at a national level and pretty soon at international levels. And it all starts at this little gym in Springdale. And that's why when we first viewed the rough cut 2 years ago with Bernard of Kalvin's film, I'm like, Bernard, the next film is gonna be about Kevin. Like, dude, like
Yeah.
Kevin had a huge influence,
Yeah,
your
yeah,
coach.
because I originally wanted the film to be about Kevin and Calvin. That was also another big shift. Is that Jose was like, this film's about Calvin. We'll do Kevin's film next.
Yep.
And he's like, but this film has to be about Calvin. I think I argued with you for a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, it's like, no, dude, like
But
you're gonna start to mix, and this is something that Hayat Tuchev
yeah,
really taught us like 15 years ago. It's like, dude, you don't want to make a hodgepodge. You basically in Russian, because he's Soviet and he calls kasha. Kasha is just like an oatmeal soup.
Yeah. He still
He warned,
teaches. Yeah.
yeah, he warned us at the documentary one class. It's like, guys, do not make kasha. Do not make oatmeal. But what do you mean don't make oatmeal? You're mixing a story here, a story there, a clip here, a clip there, and just kind of mixing it together. No, you've got to follow a narrative train and stay on focus. So that's what I was telling Bernard. It's like, if you're gonna mix Calvin's story, Kevin's story, the Philadelphia fight, all this, you're gonna make a big old porridge of, whatever. You really need to separate the two. I mean, they'll interconnect in their little metaverse, but like you really do need to have a specific protagonist. Otherwise, you're going to lose your audience if you don't keep that train straight.
Yeah, it could be hard to limit your scope, but it's kind of necessary for a good narrative, for
Yeah,
sure.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
even if you go to the corporate world like I did and Yen Wen, my classmate, my teammate did, like you move on to the corporate world and whatever you learn in journalism with that level of detail, that still helps you out, not just in creatively, but also with numbers and figures. Both Yen and I have MBAs now, and we're kind of like, you know, trying to make it in this cutthroat corporate world, and we've gone through the fight. But the lessons you learn in journalism, even though it's more of a humanities creative field, there's a lot of transfer because of the attention to detail, the attention to story, and the level of professionalism that you have to have in this field.
What is next for y'all is kind of my next question. What's the plan going forward?
Well,
How have you improved since?
so there, of course, that I want to turn Lost in the Sauce into a feature. We got an opportunity to turn Lost in the Sauce into a feature film. Right now, it's a short film, and we
Gotcha.
actually got a distribution deal through Porter Craig out in LA. It's been a long time, but I believe that we're still going to move on with that. But the biggest thing is making my coach's documentary by Kevin Lightburn, who is the founder of Stir Boxing and Fitness, and my coach, as well as Calvin's coach. There's so much story to tell. Anybody who's been anybody through boxing in Arkansas has had their career improved by Kevin, and I don't believe that he gets the recognition that he should get for that. And so that is a really big goal of mine with the film, is to make sure that people know that he's trained people like Jermaine Taylor and Oscar Captu and Calvin and myself, of course. But a lot of names. There's so many names that I can sit here and name all day. But that's what the documentary is going to be about. So that's the next big venture for the duo of Jose and I, as I'm concerned, and film wise, is the feature and getting Kevin's story done. So
Yeah, for sure. And that's, like I was telling you 8 years ago when my newspaper covered Bernard and Coach Lightburn's work with the overall community at Northwest Arkansas through boxing. That's where I learned that Coach Lightburn was coaching Jermaine Taylor. Again, I don't know anything about boxer, but I do know that Jermaine Taylor is a legend in Arkansas. I mean, nationwide, but specifically in Arkansas because
Yeah.
of everything that he did for sport, for the community. And I kind of told Bernard, wait, what, your coach was coaching who? Bernard, he was coaching Jermaine Taylor. Like, Bernard, are you serious? Like, he was coaching Jermaine Taylor. Like, yeah, man. And he just said, like, yeah, yeah. And like, it was no big deal. And now I think it's a bigger deal than it is. So I already subconsciously had in the back of my mind, like, that Coach Lightburn story is very important to tell. And so that's why I mean 2 years ago when we finished our fine cuts here with the Kalvin Henderson story, that's why I pushed for the story of Kevin Lightburn. Like, I know he's done a lot of work with the community, a lot of things that have been featured in the newspapers, in the Democrat Gazette, about just reaching out to the community. And like, I know he has a quote that he understands that not all kids can afford like football equipment. Not all kids can play football because we're undersized. We don't meet the physical requirements to play football. Not
Right.
everybody can play basketball because we're not 7 feet tall. But anybody can box, and that's what have different weight categories, so that everybody can partake in it. And I think that's a very noble thing of Coach Lightburn to say, like, he's trying to raise funds to help young people develop as people, as competitors. Just learning to defend yourself is so important. And that silent, quiet work that he's done in the community, like, we need to amplify that. Even though I know he's a humble guy and he doesn't want attention to himself, but the work itself does need to be amplified. And we hope that this film that we're gonna make on Coach Lightburn will shed some light on the importance of teaching young people discipline, patience, and all that stuff. As my son over there is talking right now, I hope he learns to box. Hopefully,
Yeah.
these guys will coach him up, especially because it's a tough world out there, and you've got to learn how to fight. Both at a spiritual level and at a more physical level. At a professional level, no matter what, you've got to fight. And it's the world is merciless, and you got to be able to defend yourself and make yourself known and make yourself present.